He built his reputation by stealing mine. For years, my boss took credit for my designs and erased my name like I never existed. So I waited. I gathered proof. This is one of those revenge stories where justice doesn't happen quietly. It happens on stage, on camera, in real time. My boss stood on that stage, clutching the award meant for my designs, smiling like he'd actually earned it. He didn't know that the projector behind him was about to show the world the truth I'd been hiding for months. The applause was deafening, washing over the grand ballroom of the Metro Convention Center like a tidal wave of misplaced adoration. I sat at table 12, near the back, clutching a glass of lukewarm water so tightly I thought the crystal might snap in my grip. I watched Julian Thorne, the principal architect of Thorne & Associates, bask in the spotlight. He looked impeccable in his bespoke tuxedo, his silver hair perfectly coiffed, projecting the image of the seasoned visionary the world believed him to be. He was accepting the Golden Caliper Award, the highest honor in our industry, for the design of the Neo-Futurist Library in Copenhagen, a design that was revolutionary. A design that utilized a unique geometric glass structure to maximize natural light while maintaining thermal efficiency. A design that had kept me awake for 4 months straight, surviving on espresso and sheer will. A design that Julian had called pedestrian when I first showed it to him, only to slap his name on the blueprints 2 weeks later. I am Ruby King. For 5 years, I was the invisible engine running the prestigious machine that was Julian's firm. I was the one who stayed late to fix the structural integrity issues in the junior associates' plans. I was the one who ghost-wrote the articles Julian published in architectural digests. And I was the one who had poured my soul into the Copenhagen project, only to be erased from the narrative completely. But tonight, the narrative was about to change. Tonight was not just an award ceremony. It was a televised execution of a reputation, and I was the one with the hand on the switch. To understand why I did what I did, you have to understand the culture at Thorne & Associates. It was a place built on fear and idolatry. Julian Thorne was a cult of personality. He hadn't drawn a single line on a blueprint in 15 years. He was a businessman, a charmer, a man who knew how to shake hands and drink scotch with developers. He hired young, hungry, brilliant architects, squeezed them dry of their creativity, and then discarded them or kept them in the basement, terrified that if they left, he would ruin their careers. I fell into the trap right out of graduate school. I was 24, naive, and desperate to work for the man who had designed the spire of Aeon. I didn't know then that the spire had actually been designed by a woman named Sarah Jenkins, who had mysteriously left the industry and moved to a farm in Vermont a decade ago. I only found that out later, when I started digging into the archives. My first 2 years were standard hazing. I fetched coffee, I organized files, I did the grunt work of drafting bathroom layouts and parking garages. But I didn't mind. I was learning. I was in the presence of greatness, or so I thought. I worked 80-hour weeks without complaint. I wanted to prove I belonged. The first crack in the illusion happened during my 3rd year. I had sketched a concept for a boutique hotel in downtown Seattle. It was a small project, but I had a vision for a cascading garden facade. I left the sketch on my desk. The next morning, it was gone. 3 days later, at a team meeting, Julian unveiled the Cascade concept. It was my sketch, scanned and projected onto the smartboard. I remember sitting there, my heart hammering against my ribs. I waited for him to say, "Ruby came up with this interesting direction." Instead, he said, "I was meditating on the relationship between urban density and nature, and this vision came to me." The room applauded. I froze. Afterward, I went to his office, trembling. I knocked and walked in. "Julian," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "that sketch, the Cascade, that was mine. I left it on my desk." He looked up from his phone, his eyes cold and devoid of any empathy. He smiled, a slow, predatory curving of his lips. "Ruby," he said, his voice smooth as silk, "you work for Thorne & Associates. You are an extension of my hand. If my hand draws a line, does the hand get the credit or the mind that commands it?" "But I drew it," I protested. "It was my idea." "And who pays for the paper you drew it on?" he asked, standing up and looming over me. "Who pays for the lights in this office? Who pays your salary? Everything created within these walls belongs to me. That is the industry, Ruby. If you want credit, go start your own firm and starve. If you want a career, you sit down, you learn, and you be grateful I'm letting you participate in my vision." I should have quit then. I know that now, but I was scared. He was powerful. He could make one phone call and ensure I never worked in a major city again. So I swallowed my pride. I told myself that I was gaining experience. I told myself that eventually he would make me a partner, and then I would get my due. That lie sustained me for another 2 years. It sustained me until the Copenhagen Library Project. This was the big one. The city of Copenhagen wanted a landmark. They wanted something that spoke to the future of learning. The brief was incredibly complex, requiring a blend of sustainable engineering and high art aesthetics. Julian was stressing out. He had fired his 2 senior lead architects a month prior in a fit of rage over a failed bid in Dubai, and he was running out of talent to exploit. He called me into his office. "Ruby," he said, pouring me a glass of whiskey I didn't want, "I need you to step up. I'm putting you as the lead on the Copenhagen concept. If you land this, we're talking partnership. We're talking your name on the door." I believed him. God help me, I believed him. For the next 4 months, I ceased to be a human being. I became a machine of geometry and light. I practically lived in the office. I researched Danish architectural history. I studied the angle of the sun at that specific latitude to ensure the reading rooms would be naturally lit without glare for 10 hours a day. I designed a double-skin facade that acted as a thermal buffer, reducing energy costs by 40%. It was beautiful. It was a twisting helix of glass and timber, rising from the ground like a growing tree. I called it the knowledge helix. When I presented the final rendering and the 3D model to Julian, he was silent for a long time. He walked around the holographic table, staring at every angle. He zoomed in on the structural supports. He looked at the energy calculations. Finally, he looked at me. "It's adequate," he said, with a dismissive wave of his hand. "It's a bit derivative of Calatrava, don't you think? And the timber usage feels a bit rustic for a modern city." My heart sank. I had poured everything into this. I thought it was a masterpiece. "I'll have to heavily revise it," he sighed, "but it gives me a starting point. Go home, Ruby. Get some sleep. You look terrible." I went home, devastated. I slept for 18 hours. When I returned to the office on Monday, the submission had already been sent to the committee. I asked to see the final version, expecting to see Julian's heavy revisions. I opened the file on the server. It was my design, identical. He hadn't changed a single pixel. He hadn't moved a single beam. The only thing that had changed was the title block. Principal Architect, Julian Thorne. Design Lead, Julian Thorne. My name wasn't even listed in the credits, not even as a drafter. I stormed into his office. I didn't knock. "Julian," I said, my voice shaking with a rage I had never felt before. "You submitted my design. You didn't change anything, and my name isn't on it." He didn't even look up from his paperwork. "We discussed this, Ruby. It's a firm effort." "You promised me partnership," I yelled. "You said if I landed this, my name would be on the door." "And we got the contract?" he asked, finally looking at me. "We don't know yet," I said. "Then stop whining until we win. If we win, I'll take care of you." We did win. The announcement came 2 months later. The architectural world went crazy. Critics called it the most significant design of the decade. They called Julian Thorne a genius reborn. They praised his sensitivity to light, his bold use of timber. And Julian? He soaked it up. He did interviews with Wired, with Architectural Digest, with the New York Times. In every single interview, he talked about his inspiration. He made up stories. He said the idea came to him while watching a leaf fall in a park in Kyoto. He said he sketched the initial concept on a napkin at a diner. He was stealing my life. He was stealing my mind. When the Golden Caliper nomination was announced, I went to him one last time. I asked him if I could at least come to the ceremony as part of the team. I asked if he would mention me in the speech. He laughed. Actually laughed. "Ruby, tickets are $5,000 a plate. I'm taking the investors and my wife. There's no room at the table for support staff. Watch it on TV. You'll learn something about how to carry yourself in public." That was the moment. That was the exact second my sadness turned into cold, hard calculation. He didn't just steal my work, he tried to erase my existence. He treated me like a disposable tool. I realized then that legal action would be too slow. He had better lawyers. He would bury me in paperwork for years. He would claim I was a disgruntled employee. It would be my word against the great Julian Thorne. No, I needed something undeniable. I needed something public. I needed to destroy the myth of Julian Thorne forever. I had 3 weeks before the ceremony. I started by befriending the IT director of our firm, a guy named Marcus. Marcus hated Julian too. Julian had once thrown a stapler at Marcus because the Wi-Fi was slow. Marcus was easy to turn. I didn't tell him everything, but I told him I needed access to the deep archives. I needed the server logs. I spent my nights at the office, not working, but digging. I found everything. I found the metadata on the Copenhagen files, proving they were created on my workstation, under my login, at times when Julian's calendar showed he was in the Bahamas. I found the version history showing 0 edits from his account. But that wasn't enough. I needed to prove a pattern. I dug into the archives from 10 years ago. I found Sarah Jenkins' old files. I found the original CAD drawings for the spire of Aeon. They were dated 6 months before Julian claimed to have designed it. I found emails from Julian to Sarah, threatening to blacklist her if she spoke up. I found more. I found that Julian had been paying a ghostwriter to write his book. I found invoices for design concepts purchased from students in Europe and passed off as his own. I compiled it all. Gigabytes of evidence. Timestamps, emails, recordings, file logs. But how to present it? A blog post? No, he would scrub it. A lawsuit? Too quiet. I needed to hijack the moment of his greatest triumph. I knew the venue for the Golden Caliper Awards. It was the Metro Convention Center. I knew the AV company that was handling the event because we had worked with them on a theater renovation the previous year. I called in a favor. I told the technical director, a woman named Elena, who owed me for catching a major error in a lighting rig plan that would have cost her job, that I wanted to prepare a surprise tribute video for Julian. "He's so humble," I lied, making my voice sound sugary and devoted. "He won't prepare anything flashy. I want to surprise him with a montage of his process sketches for the Copenhagen project." Elena bought it. She gave me the upload link for the projection system. She gave me the run-of-show schedule. I knew exactly when he would be on stage. I spent a week editing the video. It wasn't a tribute. It was a documentary of fraud. I narrated it myself. I synced the audio of him threatening me. I overlaid the metadata of the files. I created side-by-side comparisons of his stolen works versus the originals. The night of the awards arrived. I didn't have a ticket to the main floor, but I had bought a general admission pass that got me into the back of the room, far away from the VIP tables. I wore a simple black dress. I wanted to blend in with the shadows until it was time to step into the light. I sat there, sweating, my phone in my hand. I had remote access to the presentation server through the back door Marcus had helped me set up, just in case Elena checked the file beforehand. I had swapped the file at the last possible second, 5 minutes before the ceremony began. The ceremony dragged on. Best residential, best commercial, best landscape. Finally, the main event. The presenter, a famous architecture critic, took the podium, and the Golden Caliper for Excellence in Public Architecture goes to The Copenhagen Helix by Julian Thorne of Thorne and Associates. The room erupted. The massive screens on either side of the stage showed a glamour shot of the library. Julian stood up, buttoned his jacket, kissed his wife, and walked to the stage. He looked like a king. He took the trophy. He adjusted the microphone. "Thank you," he began, his voice rich and baritone. This project is the culmination of a lifetime of dreaming. They say architecture is frozen music. Well, this melody came to me in a dream, a vision of light and sustainability." I looked at my phone. I had the control interface open. There was a button labeled Override Source A. I pressed it. Behind Julian, the massive projection screen flickered. The image of the library vanished. The room went slightly dark as the projector reset for a split second, and then my video began. It started with a black screen and white text, "The Architect's Hand." Then my voice boomed over the speakers, cutting through Julian's speech. If my hand draws a line, does the hand get the credit or the mind that commands it? It was the recording of Julian yelling at me in his office. The clarity was crystal clear. The audience gasped. A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. Julian froze. He looked behind him, saw the screen, and his face went pale. He turned back to the microphone. "Excuse me, there seems to be a technical glitch." But the video continued. It showed the date, August 12th. It showed a screen capture of my workstation speeding through a time-lapse of me designing the helix. The time codes were visible, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. Then text appeared, Julian Thorne's, location, Bahamas Resort. A photo of Julian on a yacht holding a cocktail dated the exact same day flashed on the screen. The murmurs in the crowd turned into shouts. Julian was waving his hands at the tech booth. "Cut it! Cut the feed!" he screamed, abandoning his calm persona. But Elena couldn't cut it. I had locked the system. The video shifted gears. It flashed back to 2014, the Spire of Aeon. It showed the original blueprints signed by Sarah Jenkins. It showed the email from Julian. "Take the severance package and sign the NDA, or I will make sure you never draw a doghouse again." The room was in chaos now. People were standing up. Phone cameras were flashing, capturing the screen, capturing Julian's meltdown. Julian tried to leave the stage, but he was trapped by the podium and the glare of the lights. He looked small. He looked like a thief caught in the act. The video concluded with a final audio clip, one I had recorded during our last meeting. "Tickets are $5,000 a plate, Ruby. There's no room at the table for support staff." The screen went black, leaving only white text, written, designed, and exposed by Ruby King. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. It lasted for perhaps 5 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. Julian stood there, the Golden Caliper trophy dangling loosely in his hand. Then the booing started. It began in the back, near where I was sitting, and swept forward. It wasn't just booing, it was a release of tension from an industry that knew deep down how common this theft was. But seeing it exposed so brutally, so undeniably, shattered the polite facade. Julian dropped the trophy. It hit the stage with a dull thud and rolled away. He scrambled off the stage, shielding his face from the cameras, disappearing behind the curtains. I stood up. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. I just felt a massive weight lift off my shoulders. I turned and walked out of the ballroom while the chaos was still unfolding. I walked out into the cool night air of the city. My phone started buzzing. Then it started ringing. It hasn't really stopped since. The aftermath was faster and more brutal than I expected. The video went viral before I even got home. Hashtag RubyKing and hashtag ThorneFraud were trending worldwide within an hour. The next morning, the board of directors of Thorne and Associates issued a statement. Julian was placed on immediate leave pending an investigation.
but there was nothing to investigate. The evidence was all over the internet. Within a week, the city of Copenhagen announced they were suspending the contract with Thorne & Associates and reviewing the intellectual property rights. They reached out to me directly. 2 weeks later, Julian was sued by the investors, then by Sarah Jenkins, who finally felt safe enough to come out of hiding, then by 3 other former employees who had similar stories. Julian Thorne didn't just lose his career, he lost his legacy. He was stripped of his previous awards. The American Institute of Architects revoked his license. He is currently facing multiple lawsuits for fraud and breach of contract that will likely bankrupt him. As for me, I didn't go back to the office. I didn't have to. I started my own firm, King & Associates, from my living room, but I'm not staying there for long. The Copenhagen Committee awarded the contract to me, specifically to me. They said they wanted the mind that created the vision, not the hand that stole it. I hired Marcus as my CTO. I hired Sarah Jenkins as a senior consultant. She's moving back from Vermont next week. People ask me if I feel bad about ruining a man's life on live television. They ask if it was too harsh. They ask if I could have handled it privately. I tell them this. Architecture is about structure. It's about building on a solid foundation. Julian Thorne built his castle on sand and stolen land. All I did was kick the sand away and let gravity do the rest. I'm not invisible anymore, and the next time I stand on a stage to accept an award, I won't need to look over my shoulder. The name on the trophy will be mine. If you believe stolen work deserves consequences, like the video and subscribe. More revenge stories where justice actually wins are coming.